3 years ago on this show, we had a guest who has one of the most played, downloaded, and re listened to episodes that we've ever released. He is the PA, Dave Mittman. He's been a PA for 50 years, has been unbelievably involved at the state and national level, now teaches at a doctoral program about advocacy, and he's here to talk to us about 8 things that we're going to need to know about the PA profession in the next 8 years. Without further ado, here he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Dave Mittman. Welcome to The PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. Dave, I don't get to say this too often, but welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tracy, for inviting me, and I'm really glad to be here and talk to you as we would talk over lunch.
You know what's underrated? Feeling seen. That's what happened the first time I logged into Sermo. The questions? Spot on. The responses? Thoughtful and supportive. The community? Full of APPs who are juggling the same chaos I am, and somehow doing it with sarcasm, caffeine, and a touch of brilliance. I've connected with fellow surgery PAs, given advice to new grads, and realized, surprise, we are all just humans practicing medicine in scrubs, hungry for community and doing the best we can. Oh, and the surveys? Yeah, Sermo basically funded my 5-day ski trip to Banff. Flights and food, courtesy of me, my brain, and Sermo's survey thank you payments. So if you're craving community, extra cash, and real talk with people who get it, come and join us. Sermo. Talk medicine, talk life, talk about that one patient from Thursday you can't stop thinking about. Sign up today using the link in the show notes and get $20 bonus just for joining. Tell us a little bit about you and your background and what you do now.
Okay, I graduated PA school 50 years ago, which is amazing to me. And I've been involved advocacy-wise and leadership-wise as a PA for 50 years. I was a vice president of my class at Long Island University, yay. And I have done so many things. Leadership-wise, I've been president of New York State Society of PAs. I've launched 5 PA groups, and 2 are not here anymore. Not for the sake of any PA energy, but because they probably served their purpose. And then president of the AAPA in the COVID year of 2020, which was amazing. And still am very much involved. I teach at Lynchburg in their DMSC program, and I teach advocacy, which is sort of what we're going to talk about today. I'm an entrepreneur. I've started a number of businesses, all of them successful, and I'm proud of that. And if you're old enough, you will remember Clinician Reviews, which was a journal that went to PAs for free. And it was the #1 read journal for PAs for 15 years or so, and NPs, by the way. And started a web community called Clinician One, and sold both of those things along with my partner. And now I'm just teaching and making trouble, basically. Good trouble, though.
The last time we had you on the show, we talked about the future of the PA profession, and that episode is to this day one of the most listened to episodes we've ever released. Listeners and clinicians are hungry to have a good understanding of what's coming, what's going to change, what are the things that are going to affect us and our patients and our teams at the bedside. So, as someone who's been around for longer than I've been alive as a practicing PA, tell
Okay. Don't rub it in.
when you look into the future, what are the things that you see changing? What are the things we need to have a finger on the pulse of as practicing PAs?
I want to start off with just to let everyone know that everything coming out of my mouth is my opinion, but it's a very evidence-based opinion, and it's shared by most of the leadership that I know. And my best friends are past AAPA presidents and NP leaders also. But this is really about PAs today. And so um, it's, I can't prove anything, but I'll guarantee that most of it's going to come to pass. So, but let's start out with the good news. The good news is the experiment worked. Okay, 50 whatever years ago, 1965, we decided, or the world decided, that something called a physician assistant / associate would be created. And now the profession is it's not a real profession yet, and we'll talk about that. But the profession is here, it's alive, it's very well, and it's here to stay. There are now probably more than 200,000 PAs in America. If we were dangerous or not to the level of if we listened to the AMA, we would think that, oh my God, don't see a PA. And the truth is, after 200,000, I think we see like 1 million people a day easily. But when you have, that's 200,000 of us seeing 5 people a day. So we see millions of people a day. And the warts would have come out. They would have been fixed. They were fixed if they did come out. And we have a PA general, a PA astronaut. We just last week had the first PA admiral in the Navy. So we're gaining stature in leadership that I truthfully never in my life thought we'd gain. And then most programs, how do you measure a profession's success? Well, who wants to be that profession? And it's not just about money. You can work a lot less hard in life and make comparable money to where PAs are today, not where we're going to be in 10 years, which I think is considerably higher, but put that away for a second. Most programs have 75 people applying per seat. You don't find that in almost any other profession. So we're doing quite well before we get to the negative stuff or the stuff that's going to confuse us a little bit. I think our leaders are listening better than they've ever listened before, honestly, being one of them, certainly. So let's start out with something we don't learn in PA school. And chart review, supervision, ratios, counter signatures were all put in effect from 1967 to 1973, when most PA laws were written in most states. And it was logical. We were an experiment. That's why I said the experiment worked. And all of these things, I was around for some of them, were meant to go away when we got better and better, and the public could be assured of our safety and our competence. And, even our boards, everything, the whole package. And we're still living with these remnants because basically organized medicine said, let's not take them away. Because the more regulations we can have, the more barriers we can throw in front of the PA profession and the NP profession, by the way, but they have something we don't have, the better. So we need to now look at our profession in a whole new paradigm. The experiment worked. Where do we go from here? We don't need all those things. They didn't do anything or were never proven to do anything. Even supervision, by the time you saw the patient and they walked out and you brought up the case, it was a week later. So it really didn't work. Asking questions works and getting consults works and all of that. So first, let's talk about full practice, which we called OTP, which is out because OTP meant so many things. It meant reimbursement. It meant a PA board, which we'll talk about. But for full practice, every profession, every profession has full practice. They also have another thing, which is called practicing at the practice level, where your regulations are made up not in your legislation, but at the practice level. So we are now calling, by the way, I left this out, we're now calling our full practice or OTP PA modernization, because it encompasses so much, even title change. So today, I think we're gonna start to determine how we determine who we are and what we do ourselves, instead of having a supervising physician do it. And full practice is important because if you have full practice, you are a profession. If you're tethered to another profession, you're basically, even though we're not, but you're a paraprofessional. You need a teaching assistant needs a teacher. A whatever assistant, producer's assistant needs a producer. We don't. And the thing is, people have walked into examining rooms for years and heard someone say they were someone's assistant. And then the someone who they were assisting never came in. So we really weren't. And we were lying. And we were brought up with a paradigm where all that fit our little space, but doesn't fit the rest of the world anymore. And with so many physicians becoming employees, the number of, let's just say, family practice stocks is going down, and the number of NPs and PAs is going up. But the number of people who want to take responsibility for answering questions and supervising and doing all that has changed dramatically because they're employees. 75 to 80% of all physicians are now employees. And when you get numbers like that, they want to go to work and go home. Just like we want to go to work and go home. Yes, I want to save patients' lives. I want to do great. Patients come first. They always do. But at the end of the day, I don't want responsibility for someone else if I'm an employee. Now, when I owned the practice, and the more I taught you, the more money we'd make, and the more patients we'd see, and it was wonderful. But those days are over. So now, again, how do we reshape ourselves? So we're going to have full practice. That means we determine who we are and what we do, rather than someone else telling us who we are and what we do. And it's a real mental shift. So how do we shift it? The first shift we do is realize that everything that happens will be determined not in our legislation anymore, but at the practice level. What does that mean? It means that your clinical abilities, the insurance companies, the malpractice companies, the people who hire you, the hospital bylaws, if you did a residency, a fellowship, if you have a doctorate, you're how you feel about yourself. Some people are very extroverted medically, some people are a little introverted medically. All of that will, at the practice level, be the determining factor in what you do. And will we need procedure logs? Possibly. Will we need residencies? Possibly. But we will have to start determining our own little space and how we fit in, not how someone else. So the PA Board of Medicine will be important also. And that's going to be another thing we'll talk about. But again, we're the only profession that does not determine what we do at the practice level. So I have heard educators, and I know, Tracy, you've heard this, and every PA has heard this, or thought it, say, well, if we don't have supervision or someone watching us in some way, what happens to the brand new PA? Can they do anything? Well, the laws are now getting negotiated where you'll have supervision for a number of years and then you'll be quote unquote independent. But that's still not the way it should be done. Because think of a nurse or any profession, but let's take a nurse or a pharmacist, and they graduate school, or an MD or DO. Their license, the day they graduate, permits them to do everything. Now, what residency is a practice level decision. Now, you need it in the United States, and that's going to change, by the way. We'll talk about that too. But you need it to practice. But clearly, at the practice level, they won't let you do things unless you've proven. So a nurse can't walk in a hospital straight from school and run the cardiac ICU. Now, at her law, her legislation, or his legislation says they can, but at the practice level, they'll never be able to. And same thing with a physician, same thing with a pharmacist isn't going to mix the most dangerous chemotherapeutic agents on day one they get hired from school. And it's going to be the same with us. We will gently move ourselves in to the level of competence where we and everyone else around us, just like physicians do, just like nurses do, feel that that's appropriate with us. So that's really going to be how the practice level works. Any questions or concerns on that?
That makes so much sense that we have been in this strange codependent symbiotic relationship with our physician colleagues, which I think was warranted at the beginning for the way that PAs came to be. And that is no longer what it looks like in terms of the modern practice of medicine. So I really feel like this is overdue, but I'm glad that it's happening now and we're moving towards self governance. And I think we're sort of growing up as a profession. Like we were an apprentice profession and now we're becoming our own profession.
Exactly. So let's go into title change for a second, because I think this is one of the most fascinating things going on. We could spend an hour talking about titles. Seriously. I've really looked into this because I've been a proponent of title change for 50 years, I think. But I think it's going to be one of the most perceptual changes of our profession. Because, first of all, we can decide what a physician associate is. An assistant was always an assistant. An associate could be a Walmart associate, honestly, or an equal in my practice, and anything in between. And now we get to decide what that is. But it needs to be universally adopted, and it needs to be adopted as soon as we can do it. And we haven't been, I guess it just takes time, and I'm not willing to watch it go slowly. The PA programs, many should have changed, more should have changed. Our states have changed. I think more than half are now physician associate organizations. AAPA, we all know, is physician associate. But collectively, we need to start using it. I just came back from the New York State PA meeting, 50th anniversary meeting, and I was one of the kind of charter members. And associate was the only word used. I didn't hear assistant. Now, people said what program they were in. Students said physician assistant program, but the graduates, not anymore. But we need our programs to change. We need the rest of our state organizations to change. We need to change the way we think of ourselves. And again, assistants help someone do a job. An associate, we can figure out. I think so. One of the mistakes I think we made was we told people, well, don't use it until your state changes. And when you look at all of the other professions, so let's take nurse practitioners. They have a name that is the public now gets, nurse practitioner, or a title, and their legal title, their protected title, the one on their license, is now in most states APRN. So they are not nurse practitioners. They're licensed as APRNs, but they use the term nurse practitioner. Physicians are licensed as physicians. They use the term doctor. Now we're getting chiropractic physicians, naturopathic physicians, podiatric physicians, optometric physicians. Everybody's a physician now, but that's not their title, and no one is putting them in jail. Okay? I believe we could tomorrow put physician associate / physician assistant on our name tags, and I don't think anybody would get into trouble unless some physician, had a bug up there. It's not going to happen. seriously. The chiropractors, and look it up, besides using physician, are now using orthopedist and neurologist. Now, this is what I've heard. I have not done the evidence behind this, but I spoke to a chiropractor. He said he thinks it's a 40-hour course, and you can call yourself a chiropractic neurologist. If that's not confusing, please, physician associate will not be confusing. And here's another little thing to throw in. We use the term APP. Okay, so we say APP on a lot of badges, physician assistant, maybe when you turn it around, or PA when you turn it around. Why is APP any different than physician associate? We should be able to use, neither are protected titles, but again, if chiropractors can use orthopedist, which, by the way, none of those titles, neurologist, pediatrician, geriatric, none of those titles are protected titles. So we could use those also. And my personal prediction will be that we will, 10 years from now, be calling ourselves pediatrician PAs or PA pediatricians or PA dermatologists, because the public understands those titles. And why recreate the wheel? Another story. So that's my little spiel on titles, and that's going to change the way we're perceived and the way we perceive ourselves. A PA board of medicine is going to be developed when we get full practice, usually, and that's going to change because we're going to be governed by people who understand us instead of people who don't understand us. And today, there is no requirement for anyone on the Board of Medicine to have ever visited a PA program or even spoken to a PA, and they're governing us. Now, that's why I said we're not fully a profession. Professions, the definition of a profession, it's a guild of people with similar training and all that. They take boards and they self-govern, they self-regulate, they determine their scope of practice to some degree. And we don't do any of that. Now, we're starting to, and we've gotten 8 or 9 states now with full practice, OTP, and some of those have a rudimentary PA Board of Medicine, which is fantastic. So we're getting there. But to be recognized as a fully functioning profession, we have to be able to regulate, discipline, plan our own futures, look at how many PAs are needed, or are we going to rural areas? And we can't do all that, even just the way we're billing today. If you call Medicare and say, what's the percentage of care provided by PAs? You're still going to hear, well, it's much higher because PAs are reimbursed now for our own work. But, and here's the but, so many people are still billing under the physician's name that we have no idea. And so when do we graduate and actually know what we're doing? When do we graduate and really grow up and say, I want to know how productive this profession is? And that's going to come with, I believe, all of these changes. Also, you're going to have a board that understands your training, your education, so they will not see you as competition. A PA board of medicine will not see me as a competitor. They will see me as a colleague. They will know what I do. And when I say I did this, or got a doctorate, and I got a doctorate in lifestyle medicine or this medicine, they'll say, okay, that's probably good enough where you can practice that. So I think the changes will take the next decade, but they will come and they will be wonderful. And, we will see our profession really, I don't think we'll see it thrive. But I was going to say, I don't even think we're in the golden age of PAs yet. The programs are still expanding. There's still too many people who want to be PAs, which is a great thing. That's not a criticism. Um, so the next decades is going to be where it's at.
I want to take a moment to talk about scope creep, which has gotten a lot of the AMA sort of pushing this campaign of scope creep. It has not been my experience as a practicing PA that my physician colleagues are at all concerned about me taking their jobs. They are more bothered when I have to have them sign a paper that is I'm limited in my state from a legislation standpoint to be able to sign a wound vac paper, even though I can put it on and change it inpatient. I can't sign the discharge paper for it to be ordered. My physician colleagues are more bothered by the limitations holding me back and always have found me to be helpful. What can we do in terms of this? I feel like scope creep has gotten a lot of airtime. And I agree. I don't want to be regulated by the people whose main organization is saying we're doing too much, we should do less because they're threatened by our profession at large. So, what are your thoughts on scope creep and what we can do at the practice level?
I think, well, that's actually two questions. So, scope creep is an artificial term made up by the AMA where they can brag to their members what an effective job they're doing. And they need a villain. And the villain is everybody wants to do what we do. And they all are attempting to broaden their scope of practice. Okay? There's no evidence that that's true with our profession. The fact that we're here to them is scope creep. That we exist, that we breathe. Okay? Because we haven't asked, or at least I've been a leader for many years. We've not asked to do more except maybe fluoroscopic procedures. Because in many states, we can't do fluoroscopy. You have to be an x-ray tech or whatever, or a physician who knows little about that, but you get trained in residency, so you do. Other than that, though, we haven't asked to be able to do any more than we're able to do. And so we're not trying to increase our scope. We're trying to decrease our administrative burdens. We're trying to say to America, again, the experiment worked. So if the experiment worked, let us do what we do well, and we can prove to you that we do well. We're not trying to, I don't want to go in and do surgery, okay? And most surgical PAs don't. They don't want to be surgeons. And you know what? That may come in time, but that's not what we want to be. If I can provide whatever level, I don't mean competent level, I mean 90%, 100%, 110%, 75%, whoever I am as a PA, of the care that my patients need and refer or consult on the rest, that's all I want to do. There's no scope creep involved here, and there never really has been. Again, we're not looking, prescribing, I think, was the last thing that we tried to do that was out of our scope, and we said, no, we need it for our scope. We need it to provide care. I don't think there's anything more. Signing a paper or not is not scope creep. Scope, to me, your scope of practice is what can you do clinically? So is portable ultrasound scope creep? I don't think so. I think that's keeping up with technology. I mean, you don't need a new license for that. So I'm not sure what scope creep is, but I know it's been very effective, for the AMA. And are there other professions that are trying to do that? Yes, there are, and broaden their scope for sure. Pharmacy is now the major injectors when it comes to people getting vaccinations. So, and it used to be your family doc, right? And so that's changed. But I don't see us doing that.
And I think calling it that and pitting different professions against each other is standing in the way of patients getting what they need. So if you say to me, pharmacists want to inject, and this is what the training is going to be for them to be able to do that, and then more people get the vaccines that they need, I fail to see the problem here.
When you hear people complaining from organized medicine, it usually, my humble opinion, this is me, has to do with money and power. And money in our society is power. And if I believe if any profession can show it's really competent in what they do, like I'm not sure chiropractors should prescribe. That's not what they learn in school. I don't think they learn a lot of pharmacology. They learn a lot about spines and muscles and things like that. I'm not sure There's professions that want to do things that I would disagree with. And it's not about because it would expand care, it's about patient safety. And I know I sound like a physician now, but it's true. Um, but I don't think, again, with us, scope creep is not an issue. It should not be an issue. That's all about keeping us under your thumb. And yeah, I don't understand it. And I've looked at it. I've said, where are we trying to do more than we do now? And it's not. Full practice is not, it's not a scope of practice issue, it's a regulatory issue. Now, if they want to say we have regulatory creep, yeah, we do. We want to take away those barriers. No, that we don't need anymore. That's how professions evolve. Everything evolves. You don't want your teenage kid to be your teenage kid the rest of their life, although you love them dearly when they are. But you want them to grow up and be, happy and mature and sweet people. And so we're trying to be happy, mature, and sweet people first. Right. That's not scope creep to me. Okay. So one of the things we're going to have to do, another thing that's going to change, is our self-perception. As PAs, we've not, in our day-to-day interactions, always acted professionally. Okay, now everyone's going to look at me and smack, smack, smack. What are you talking about? It's just using your first name with patients. Oh, Dr. Smith's not available till next March, but you can see Mary next week. So now I'm a consumer. I'm an old guy. I'm an old Jewish guy, which is even worse, right? And so I call the physician's office, or, I don't call the PA's office because we don't have any PAs with offices around here, or I'd be seeing them. But I see PAs and I see NPs, and a lot. I try to. But I call and I hear that Mary will be available. And my first question is, what is a Mary? And they hem and haw, and no one, apparently, most people think it's okay or don't have the guts to ask, honestly. And then they say, Mary's a PA. And I say, can you explain what a PA is? Try this, everybody, seriously. And you get, what I get most of the time is, there's someone who helps the doctor. Okay, because the receptionist has no idea that, what we do and who we are. I mean, they know what we do, but they don't know how to explain us. And so professions don't call themselves Mary. Think of a psychologist you've gone to. I mean, I'm not even talking about physicians, or a podiatrist you've gone to, or even a chiropractor. I mean, now once you get to know the patient and they're an established patient, they can call you whatever they want. But I don't think the receptionist referring to you as Mary is going to be a good thing anymore. We have to be on the signs in the practice. We have to have cards, and I know most of us have that, but most of us are not on the signs. Not in Florida, not in the front. We also need the. There was something else, but announcing to patients when we enter a practice. Maybe send an email out with our short little CV. And when we leave, that we've left. I've seen PAs at places for years, and all of a sudden, they're not there anymore. Well, what happened? If it was a physician, they would send you a letter or an email. So that's the kind of thing where I'm saying our self-perception has to change. I think our collective culture will change it, because what happens in your community, and you're going to be networking, you're going to pick up. And again, write a script. Ask people to call you PA Smith rather than Mary. It's just better. Be on the signage, the stationery, the front door, in the ads. We have ads all over Florida. 55 and older community I live in. And there's, come to our group. And they just show the physicians, a derm group here. And they have 5, 6 PAs. They're not even in the picture. That shouldn't be anymore. And I think that's going to change. Here's 2 things I want everyone to do. Insist on all the reports from any consult that you send. any referral that you make come to you so they know at the practice level that you're the provider who's taking charge of that patient. The other thing is refer to other PAs, and if you agree, NPs in your community. If you refer to other PAs, their value will increase. We don't do that. We don't. And, if you say, oh, I know a PA across town, but they're the best in derm that I've seen in ages, refer people to them because they're going to get more valuable. They may be asked to become a partner in time or get profit something more than they're getting, and they'll refer back to you because someone will say, "Do you know someone good in primary?" I was in primary care, so I'm thinking of me, of course. We only know right. So someone will say to them, "Do you know anybody good in primary care?" Yeah, Dave Mittman, my friend. Actually, Dr. Mittman, who is a doctor but not a physician, and we'll have to go into that for a while. And then wear a long white coat. I think that's important, even over your scrubs, because most of us are women, most of us are young. We're not 70 and 60. And when a woman in scrubs walks in, I think outside of surgery, we're trained to think that they're medical assistants or nurses. And the physician comes in with the long white coat. It adds to professionalism. There are studies that patients say, if you wear a long white coat, I think that you're very knowledgeable and very professional. So let's do that.
Yeah, so to me, as someone who is I am the demographic of the practicing PA, right? I'm at the front of, the front end of my career. I'm female identifying. I started wearing a white coat. So I actually read one of those studies about how the perception is different. And I'm in a practice where there's myself and one other person of 12 providers in our office who wear a white coat. My surgeons would never, they would lose it. They don't, and that's fine. They can choose to do whatever works for them. But I do feel like, and I have patients I've been seeing for years, I walk in the white coat, and some of them will even say to me, "Oh, look at this," because it was a new change because I read that study and started wearing it. And I do feel like it separates me in terms of professionalism. And just to echo what you said earlier, that visibility and, being on the website, on the sign, and then credentialing each other when you are referring to your physician, associate, colleagues, saying, there is someone across town that is worth the wait. It's the person you want to see for this problem. This is a colleague of mine who's incredible at what they do. I see them, my family sees them. I would refer my mother, sister, aunt to them. That goes so far. That is above you asking your neighbor, right, who you would get your colonoscopy from. This is someone who's in medicine who's saying, hey, this is who I would go to if I was having a GI problem. She's amazing. She's only there a couple of days a week. You might have to wait. It is so worth it to see that person.
Let's talk about interstate compacts because people don't, and I don't even fully understand them yet because they're not fully working yet. But those compacts have to be passed by law in your state, and they will allow APA or an NP or a physician to be licensed in your, let's say your state and 15 other states have passed the interstate compact. Now, it all depends on how they're worded, but we know some things to be true. One of them is you will be recognized as a PA in that state. We're not sure if you'll be able to open up a practice or not, and that depends on the wording of how the state passed their particular law, but you're definitely going to be recognized. And basically, it would be like holding a license in that state. We now, I think we're up to 20 states. It's either 19 or 20 in the PA compact. So when your state joins, it's going to be fantastic. Also, it's going to be amazingly good for telemedicine, telederm, psych, the things you can do over the phone. Not a problem. Now, here's the kicker. Okay, for all other professions, they all have basically the same legislation. A nurse is a nurse is a nurse, generally, not an NP, but a nurse. A physician is a physician is a physician. If you're a dermatologist, you're a dermatologist. Doesn't matter if you're in Missouri or Wisconsin. With us, if I'm in Florida and it's not, or it's in the compact, I'm sorry, but it's not a full practice state. But in 5 years, we have 75% of the states, and 15 of them are full practice states. I will be able to sit in Florida in a state where a PA needs supervision, quote unquote, and I'll be able to work in 15 states where I don't need supervision, maybe by telemedicine. So if I'm a psych PA, I can sit in Florida, not need a supervising physician, and have a thriving telepsych practice in 15 states, or in one state, or in 2 states, or in one town in that state. I mean, who knows? Or in rural areas. So it's going to change again the way we perceive ourselves. There is no supervising physician involved, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in some of those states, if you have a question, you'll go to your state, I guess, to ask the question. But also, we're going to have to learn all the legislation of every state we practice in, which is going to make us more involved, more politically aware, more aware of advocacy, because this state's going to try to get in the compact, or this state's going to try for full practice. And if they get it, wow, that's going to really change the way I can practice sitting in an office in Florida. And that's never happened to our profession before. So that's something, and it's here. It's here. We have 15 states, or 19 states, or 20 states now. So it is here. And I think that's amazing that we will be able to practice in states with different legislation. And so we'll care, I hope we'll care more about what's going on nationally, and not just what's going on in our neighborhood and how much money we make, or not, or whatever. So I think that's interesting. So my next one, if you just butt in whenever you want. Okay, so it's assistant physicians and physicians in general using the PA profession, or just physicians. So let's back up. So there are people who, usually Americans, but not always, not this particular assistant physicians now, are in a number of states. I think it's like 7. And that is a profession. They get licensed. They have a national association. But their license is supposed to be only for a number of years. Why? Because these are people, usually American, trained overseas, who could not match into a residency. So you go to the legislators and you say, you have physician's assistants who do medicine. Let us do. Look, we went to medical school. Like, we didn't go to medical school. We just went to PA medical school. But we went to medical school, and if the assistant can do this, we can too. So they pass laws that are similar to PA laws. And they usually, in the law, it says they get 2 or 3 years and then they evaporate. They have to figure out what else to do in life if they can't match into a residency. That's going to change, though, and it's scary.
Have you ever wondered if your malpractice policy is providing you with enough coverage? Turns out that employers' policies protect their interest and not necessarily yours. CM&F Group offers personal liability protection that adapts to your growing, changing responsibilities, including state compacts and allowing for protection for practicing medicine across state lines. From telemedicine to license and HIPAA defense, if it's something that you need protection for, CM&F has you covered. PA students can even enjoy a completely free student policy from your first day as a student until you become a licensed PAC. In a climate where we are hyper aware of charting, wording, covering ourselves, and constantly worried about practicing defensive medicine, you can't leave your liability coverage up to chance. Enjoy the peace of mind, exceptional customer service, and find the best comprehensive coverage that fits your practice at www.cmfgroup.com/the-PA-is-in or click the link in the show notes.
Okay, another thing we're going to have to keep an eye on is assistant physicians. So, who are those people? There are people who are licensed as assistant physicians in a number of states now. They have a national association. And the rationale was they're usually American med students that graduated, so they're physicians, but they couldn't match into a residency in the U.S. And for years, since 1910, since the Flexner report, people had to be specialists. So residencies developed, and they were specialty trained. You went to a residency. Well, they can't get in. So they went to the legislators and said, well, if a PA can do this, I'm a physician. I can certainly do this. I'm certainly as good, whatever. And it sounds logical because an assistant versus a physician sounds logical. Okay, it's totally not illogical in our minds because I have 10, 20, 30 years experience. They have zero experience. Didn't even do a residency. But so now they're licensed. And the problems start coming from that. A, are they supervised or not? We're not sure. B, do they, what does supervision mean with them versus with us? Because we know with us, it's very lax, it's very broad. The physician could be 20 miles away. Our patient's going to call them doctor because they graduated med school, but they're not licensed as physicians. And doctor and physician, we should stop using those words and use physician for physician and doctor for anyone who has a doctorate. But that's another conversation which we'll get to quickly. But how do we ensure that they have any experience? And they are in states with poor legislation, they're certainly going to take PA jobs or be looked at as somebody equivalent or better than a PA. They're also in Spanish called a physician assistants. Assistant physician comes first in Spanish. So are people going to? My feeling is that people are going to definitely think they're PAs. And so where is that? The average PA again has years more education, years more experience. I don't know where that's going, but now there's a new wrinkle in the physician world. A number of states have decided that they need rural and underserved healthcare providers. So instead of giving PAs full practice, they said if you're a physician in any country, you can come over and we will allow you to practice. You didn't even have to pass boards. You don't have to do residencies, no USMLE, no anything. Apparently, this is going to go on and happening. And we're going to get people in rural areas who shouldn't be providing care, I believe. And so I just like everybody to keep an eye out and watch their state legislation. I know your state organizations do it, and believe me, they do an amazing job as volunteers watching every little thing that goes on in the state. But non board certified in anything, non tested physicians are going to be put out there with some new name again, or maybe just called doctor and they're a physician and goodbye, go treat people. They don't know our drugs if they're foreign. They don't know our OTC drugs. They don't know, again, our social mores. And yet, here you go. You're going to move to a town, and you're the town physician. I'm just. Plus, it really messes up the whole model of physician education. Was you had to do a residency. You had to. Even GPs that were excluded by Flexner turned around in mid 1970s and said, we're not GPs anymore, we're family physicians, and we're going to start a residency. And by the way, their residencies are allowing them to do a number of years now with, at least I read this, with family physicians, the same as a PA would do, just under supervision, and then they graduate and they're family physicians, which is cool. But at least they do a residency. To not do a residency to me is very problematic. And in the physician, I mean, I think the PA world is moving towards that. If the physician world is moving away from that, then there's going to be absolutely no difference at all in education. I think PA education is better than a lot of foreign education, and even in America. I think if you take a med student, they graduate, and a PA student, they graduate. Other than neural histology and some other things, we're the same, or the PA, because of their prior experience, may even be better. I don't know. Anyway, so we have to watch that. And my next, and I think last change that we're going to see, I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I'm not saying anything really dumb. No, but is the doctorate. And the doctorate is here to stay. It's coming for you. Why? So many reasons. Let's take the most obvious one. PAs get 125 graduate credit hours for their master's degree. To a psychologist for their doctoral degree, for their Psych D, needs 74. A physical therapist, 118. An NP, I think, is also in the 70s. Occupational therapist, 103 graduate credit hours. Now, we get 125, but they give us a master's. Why? Because our profession said we don't want to be doctorally trained. I mean, that's the message for the last 50 years. And I bought into that. But if every other profession that we refer to or deal with, from Oriental medicine physicians to naturopaths to chiropractors to psychologists to occupational therapists to pharmacists to physical therapists to DNPs everyone who diagnoses and treats in the healthcare world, and let's throw in, and who can prescribe drugs, will be at a doctoral level except us. And we get more credits than they do. Now, that's unfair. It's just inequitable. And I think it has to do a lot with, again, coming up from whatever level we started as, which in my case, I went to an associate's degree program. So, and yet what I would learn at a doctoral PA program would give me the same 125 credits. Actually, I think we worked harder because we did 80 hours a week in the hospital in our second year, and I don't think they're doing that anymore. Although if I'm wrong, let me know. Where, again, diagnose, treat, and prescribe, insurance companies want someone at the doctoral level. Patients want someone at the doctoral level. I think if you said, would you have more faith in me if I had a master's degree or I had a doctoral degree in medical science, what our DMSC is? I think 90% of patients would say, no, I want someone with a doctoral degree. There's no downside. It will, right now, the DMSC programs, I don't know if everybody knows this, there are 41 postgraduate doctoral programs now, either running or announced, planned. And they're going to increase just as the PA programs are increasing. And then we're going to have the first entry-level doctorate program. But they're close now. There are PA programs you can go to and take a 3-month extension and you'll get a doctorate. 3 months. Some are 6 months. Lynchburg is 6 months, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it is. I don't have a lot to do with the master's level program. But the market is pushing us. Reimbursement is pushing us. Our full practice, which we need because we've earned it and we deserve it. And other people who learn less than us, I don't want to put it like that, but who are less responsible for the entire patient, let's put it like that, all get doctorates. Why am I the last person on the block with more credit hours getting a master's degree? So that's why I think they're coming. And will you be allowed to practice without it? Sure. I mean, again, I have friends, I have classmates that never got their bachelor's that have had fantastic careers as PAs. I know bachelor degree level PAs. I know master's degree level PAs. And then most of my friends have their doctorates, so I know doctoral level PAs. I don't think we do anything differently. I just think it's how a profession evolves. I think the same thing is happening with nurse practitioners. Same thing happened with pharmacy. Same thing happened with physical therapy, occupational therapy, audiology. I mean, let's look at all of really. Podiatry in Europe is a bachelor's degree profession. So it's very evolutionary, I guess. And I don't think we're going to have any problems with it, except can we call ourselves doctor or not will be the problem. And that's, going to be when we hit that tipping point, that critical mass, then we'll switch to Dr. Mittman, PA. I'm a real proponent in that we have to tell everyone that what profession we are. I mean, I walk into an office or a hospital and everyone's the same. And I'm like, no, who are you and what do you do? How have you been trained or educated? I want to know. And I think we owe it to patients to give them the best explanation within a minute that we can give them. I'm not going to spend 15 minutes because then I can't see them anymore. The last thing I want to talk about is what's going to happen at the practice level, and it's going to be more years from now, but we have to start thinking about it, is how do we ensure, especially in specialties, that we are who we say we are? So if I'm a derm PA or a women's health PA, what does that mean? It used to mean I worked with a physician that did derm. No, really. It's not going to mean that in the future. Other professions have had the same problem, but we will need to show insurance companies, employers, other professionals who refer to us, our patients, that we're prepared and to competently practice in a specialty. Now, what does that mean as a PA? We don't really know. Nobody's really looked and done a deep dive into it and said, okay, it doesn't mean just a CAQ. It may mean that our specialty societies get way more involved in what we do. And we read articles that are sent to us every month, and we need to have a procedure log, and we need to show them maybe we did a residency, maybe we did a fellowship, maybe we just have been in an orthopedic practice for 15 years. Again, at the practice level, those things are going to start to matter. How do we make those things show that we're competent in a specific area? And PAs are competent in those areas. I know that. And we're not the same as the physicians that are competent in those areas necessarily. Yes, in primary care and family practice and women's health and pediatrics, yes, we can be the same. In some specialties, we're not. So what does that mean to be a PA in that specialty? And that's going to all still evolve. But we have to start thinking of it. I think to say it's going to be as it always was is silly. It's not. We will mature, our profession will mature, and we will have to look at telling people, okay, I'm a dermatology PA or dermatologic PA or a dermatologist PA. They know that I did something to make me that, instead of just hang out with dermatologists. And I don't mean that it sounds, I hope you get my meaning.
Yeah, and I think that that makes sense to me that we we've sort of been just going by common sense. I've worked in this practice for so long in this specialty and I've, proved proficiency for these procedures to the people that I'm working with, but sort of formalizing that at the practice level. So it's not just, oh, yes, we all know Tracy can do this, but rather, here is the proof, here is the years of experience, here is, what we've been doing in terms of just sort of legitimizing something that's already happening.
So we'll see how that how fast we respond as a profession will be interesting. People will push back on some of this, but we're going to have to do it. And so it's just part of who we are. So for me, unless you want to bring up some questions, I'm good. I think um, advocacy. Let me just throw in advocacy. PAs are going to have to get more involved. It's ridiculous that I meet people and they say, "I really don't care. I don't care if we change our title. I'm happy being an assistant because I make more money than all of my friends." And if that's your idea of building a profession, well, la di da. That's all I mean, I don't know what to say to someone like that, or I have a cool BMW. I mean, if that's your idea of going out and really helping to provide and change medical care in the United States, then we picked the wrong people. Um, yeah, there has to be more to life, and part of that is not calling yourself Mary when you're a professional, and part of that is electing bold leadership and being involved and holding your leadership responsible, and being an advocate and writing when your state organization says, "Can you write an email for us on this subject?" That you do it. I mean, I'm not asking certainly for you to run for the presidency of your state or AAPA or whatever. Although it was really cool to do it. Just know what's going on and care about all of your colleagues and not just yourself. And I think that's going to have to start at the program level. And advocacy and teaching all of the things we spoke about today should be taught before you graduate. And then, maybe even a course on the business of medicine, and how and how does a practice run? How does a hospital run? Join a committee, get involved, ask them to change your title at they can do that in the bylaws. If they can call you APP, they can call you physician associate. So if more of us went in that direction, all of these changes would come faster. And some of them should come fast. And then some of them should be really evolutionary and come slower so we can correct the mistakes along the way. Again, as every profession has done. I'm sure when the first barber said, "I'm going to be a surgeon," they didn't have it all planned out, and right. It wasn't like, "Are you a hand surgeon or a podiatric surgeon or a this surgeon or a PA in surgery?" I mean, and we're going to have to do all that, but I'm confident we will.
And just a little reminder to the people that are listening that are thinking, I don't feel qualified or ready to step into any of those spaces. You are, and you'll figure it out. I feel like I spent the first 8 years in practice, like, well, I'm just going to stay over here where I know what I'm doing and I'm not challenged or uncomfortable or putting myself in a room where people might not be looking at me like I don't belong there. And that as I have stepped into this space and recovered from burnout and started to teach on some of these things and had the pleasure of seeing sort of up close what people are doing in their lives and in their careers and all of the spaces that PAs are stepping into, that someone has to go first and that you are just as qualified to be in that space as anyone else.
Right. And it's all about learning and being open, to change. And we can do what anyone else does. I mean, I don't want to make everybody go out and, you're not a surgeon. Don't go start a surgical practice tomorrow, but we can. And we've shown we can. And that's the beauty is, 30 years ago and 40 years ago and 50 years ago, we said we think we can. And now we know we can. And there's a difference. So if we can, let's go do it.
And that to me is what drew so many people to the PA profession in the first place, was this agility, this ability to fit into the needs of the healthcare system and to do different specialties and to grow into what we are as a profession, that only happens if we're pushing forward and we're pivoting and we're trying to do things differently than we had in the past. Otherwise, we get stuck.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And again, you can't say, why aren't PAs in rural care without today saying, well, we need physicians to be somewhere in rural care also. And when we can really show what we can do and what we're educated to do, it's not like this is a great leap. We've been doing this for years. We do it in the Army and the Navy and the Air Force and the Indian Health Service and the Public Health Service. PAs go out and run clinics alone all the time. And I'm not saying that everybody wants to do that or should do that, but this is not a new concept. There were people in my class who went out and opened a clinic in an area of need. Now, I'm not saying, to me, again, I live in a pretty upscale part of Florida. At least the little area I live in is beautiful, and there is no access to primary care. You have to see a concierge physician now. There are very few primary care people who have their practices open. And the ones that are the old-time physicians who may have an NP or PA, but they're going to retire soon. And then there'll be nobody. And if it's that bad here, I can't imagine what a rural area is like. I mean, I read about it and I know it, but I don't live there. And I can't imagine what just underserved areas are like. And we need to, three of us, and this is what we're talking about today, really. Three of us can graduate, do some sort of training that may be a primary care, even year of whatever, and then, or 2 years, and then three classmates can go open up a practice in the town they came from or in the neighborhood they came from, and maybe even get a federal grant because we can show that there's nobody providing care there. And that's what I've always seen as the North Star for us, for our profession. It's what we need to do, and if you want to do aesthetics, God bless you too. But generally, we make the biggest difference by actually helping people. And we can't do that anymore when the physician's an employee, looks at us as competition, which they do, and they tell you they do. And I've seen even physicians say, why should we even train these people? Because they're going to wind up taking their jobs. And so we need to stand on our own 2 feet and be adults. And the first step is what we've spoken about today. And 10 years from now, we'll be speaking about all kinds of new and crazy things. At least most of us will.
Awesome, Dave. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom. It is really cool to be able to hear your thoughts on the future as someone who's been practicing for the last 50 years. So thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Anytime, actually. So thanks. Hi, everybody. See you soon.
An important reminder. In medicine, it can feel so easy to be stuck in your world, in your silo, in your specialty or setting, to look around you and see some of the struggles that you are having. But it's such an important reminder to know how other people are doing and what the future of the PA profession holds in terms of hope and also in terms of obstacles and burdens that we need to overcome in order to be able to take really good care of the patients who trust us with their health and their wellness. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to another episode of The PA is In. That's all for today. This PA is out. Congratulations. You've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.